All right. Howdy and welcome back to the Ineligibles podcast. I am Will Stone. He is Chase Caldwell. It is a beautiful Saturday morning. Uh, and as of my last check, after today, there are only 4 more Saturdays left in this year without football, without college football. So uh, enjoy today, enjoy these next 4, find something to keep yourself busy. And then after that, it's go time. Even though that first weekend is just like a handful of games. Hey, it's better than nothing.
Yeah, hey, it's something. And I'll make a slight correction to you, Will. It's Saturday afternoon now.
Oh shoot, it is. Yeah.
we we were shooting for 9, but it ended up at 12:30. Uh, hey, it's Saturday. We don't have to get up that early.
Yeah. We had the grandest of plans for it to be early this morning, but that's okay. That's okay. Maybe more of our listeners are awake now and will join us on this live stream.
That's the thought. It was a branding idea. Just right in the middle of smack dab middle of your Saturday. It's really hot outside. Who wants to go outside right now? Everybody's
Yeah.
sitting at home. There's no football on the TV, so now there is. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can cast it up to your TV and just sit and watch the Saturday college football show by the Ineligibles podcast.
That's right. Like everything we do is for our listeners. So uh, this was all done with you guys in mind. But it does feel good to actually be talking about football and not about
Yeah,
realignment and not about NIL or Saban versus Jimbo. This is what we do this podcast for, and this is why you guys watch this sport is for the actual football parts of it. So we're doing quarterbacks today, as you can see if you look at the top of our banner, and it's been beat to death a little bit. Especially because it's been 2 years in a row, of a
mhm,
quarterback competition. Um, had the one last summer. King wins the job, gets hurt, you know, 5 quarters into the season, and then the guy that started the rest of the year is no longer here. So now it's back to not square one, but it just kind of reset to well, now we got 3 guys, and we like all of them. They all got their strengths and weaknesses, but it's still kind of unknown of what to expect at
right.
that position for this A&M football team.
Yeah, I think it's the hot topic of conversation amongst fans. We talked about last week or last however many days ago that was about the SEC Media Day recap that the storyline that A&M has a quarterback competition has been done over and over and over again, and so the media is not really picking that up. But the reality is that we do have a really true quarterback competition on our hands this time around. Some of the other ones, it was a competition. I mean, don't get me wrong, but there was the assumed starter as well.
Yeah,
I would venture to say on this one, it's completely up in the air. Um,
it's very split when you read like A&M Twitter and A&M message boards. Like some folks are like really strongly in Camp Johnson, and some are in
mhm,
Camp King, some are in Camp Wigman.
yeah,
Everyone's got their thoughts. There's no consensus like there has been in the past.
right. And that's what like I look back at last year. This was one of our absolute first episodes. And at the time we're talking Haynes King and Calzada, um, but there was this general assumption. I mean, it was probably 70-30, 70% King and 30% Calzada. And
Right.
so we all kind of were talking about it with the assumption that, okay, it's probably going to be King, but, let's look at some points in the event that it's Calzada. Let's see what he could do to win the job. And of course, we saw both. But
Yeah.
um, I think this year it's the case could be made for all 3 guys.
Hmm.
I would say it's likely that Johnson Johnson and King are maybe it's a 40-40-20 split, or something like that. Because I would say the two of them are probably the more likely because Wigman is a true freshman.
Right.
Um, but but he's also the type of true freshman that could push to start first year. He is the caliber of a Trevor Lawrence or Tua Tagovailoa. He's that caliber of a player,
Right.
that it's been done in college football. Um, but I still would probably venture to say it's less likely that he starts because we have two other guys that are really good quarterbacks.
Yeah. And I think, following this program since 2011, this is the first quarterback competition I feel like that like all three guys have had a shot at it. Like, last year we had King, Calzada, and Stowers, but we were like, well, Stowers, he's pretty raw. He probably won't really push to compete. It's probably going to be one of the other two. Um, I'm trying to think back. We had Kyle Allen and Kyler. Well, there was Kenny Hill and Kyle Allen, and
Mhm.
was Jokel in that one,
It
or had he
was,
already left?
it really let's see. Oh, man. Now we're talking 10 years ago, and,
Yeah,
my
it's
memory is for forgetting me. There was let's see, I guess 2013, there was a quarterback competition for really the backup,
right.
and it was between Jokel and Matt Davis and,
Kenny Hill.
Kenny Hill, and Matt Davis ended up transferring afterwards.
That's right.
Then it was Kenny Hill, but Kenny Hill was still kind of the assumed
Right.
starter after that.
Yeah.
Um, I can't
Like,
remember if Jokel was part of that one or not. No, he was. He was because then he transferred right after, didn't he?
yeah.
Where did he transfer
I
to?
think he went to TCU.
That's yeah, that's right. Oh my
But
gosh. Maybe
but
it's just too early or something. I don't know why my brain isn't
well,
working,
it's
but
been a long time ago. But even if he was involved, like it was still, oh, it's going to be either Kenny or Kyle. Like
mhm,
people weren't really giving Jokel a shot, and then it
mhm.
was Kyle and Kyler, and then it was Trevor and Hubenak, and it's really just Trevor, um, and then Mon Starkel, and it's always been a two horse race for the most part.
Yeah, it has. You're right on that. And this one is truly a three-horse race, um but I would, if I were to say the truest quarterback competition that we probably had through the years since being in the SEC at least, um that's akin to this one would probably be the Kyle Kyler year.
Yeah,
Um and I have faith that Jimbo's going to handle this one a little bit better than that one was handled, but
man,
um
you hope so.
you really do. But
um, well, yeah. I guess before we really get into it, there was one thing that I wanted to bring up as far as like the importance of the quarterback position for this team and who ultimately wins. Um, I was reading. I'm unashamed in my fanhood for Bill Connolly as a writer and football analyst. He had his SEC West preview out the other day. He's got his own analytic system, and A&M is second in the West right now behind Alabama. Um, and in his paragraph on A&M, he's like, Jimbo has really gotten the most out of this program at every spot except for the passing game and quarterback
mhm,
play, and receivers are involved in that too, which we'll talk about on a different day. But um, we haven't had a plus quarterback in the system yet. Like Mond was good in 2020. He had
mhm.
great games and bad games, but there hasn't been that guy that really just uh, is an upper echelon caliber of player in college football. So I
Sure.
think that's the missing puzzle piece. That's the key to unlock. If quarterback hits this year, this is a playoff contending team. If it's just above average, if it's not good, then maybe 10-2. If it's bad, there's no telling what it could be. And
Mhm.
we haven't talked about schedule yet, but this schedule is loaded with really good college quarterbacks. So you have to have a good one to really feel good about competing against those teams.
Yeah, I if you think about it in terms of like a key and a lock, right? And lock has all the pins that you have, and you have to have the right tabs on the keys to make the pins go up enough. I think we have all the right pins. Where if we're picking this lock, we need that very last one to fall, which is at quarterback. And
Yeah.
I think you're spot on with that. Of um, QB play will really determine what we end up with, because we've got all the keys in place. We just have to get this last one to fall just right. Now,
Yeah.
if I had it my way, I would have loved for Haynes to not have gotten hurt last year, to have had a full year under his belt and be a returning quarterback. And if we were in that position, I would feel even stronger going into this season than I do right now. Um, but when you have a question at quarterback, and this, I'm gonna pull in Hayden's question here, of the constant preseason quarterback competition is healthy for the program long term. It's uh, great question from the degree of, when we're constantly having these quarterback competitions, when we have everything going on year after year after year, we need that little bit of consistency. When we have that consistency, that that gets rid of the question marks, of course. And when you have question marks at quarterback, it makes everything go up in the air. It's like, we have a great team, but what's the quarterback going to do? It's different than if we have a great team, but we have question marks at linebacker.
Right.
It, so it's truly the pivotal position. Of course, I mean, I'm not telling anybody anything new there, um, but I think that's why at least I'm hesitant to say that this is our year, right? Because it's really hard to say that this is our year when we don't have a returning quarterback.
Right.
Um, but if you look at probably the most successful season in recent memory of 2012, well, that was with a new quarterback. So it's possible.
Yeah.
It's all absolutely possible. But until you get into the season and you see who's the starter and how they're performing, it's really hard to say what the true expectations of this team are.
Right. So with that, just right off the bat, do you want to like kind of say as of today, if you had to bet on it, like who is your pick to win if you had to put some of your own money down?
Man, it's hard. Quite frankly, I wouldn't put money down because it is a true toss up for me. If
Right.
you'd asked me that question last year, I would have said Haynes King. This year, again, I would put it at a 40-40-20 split. I think Johnson and King are on equal footing. I think they have just as much likelihood to start, as the other. And of course, I knew that I'm gonna have to answer that question eventually, right?
Right.
So today will be the day that I answer it. Um, and and I don't know. My thinking is that, um, my thinking is game one, Max Johnson will be your starter. Is my thinking, but I think it will continue to be a competition until our first SEC game. If that's a fair answer to the question.
That is, yeah. So game one, you think Max gets the nod?
Yeah, I think Max gets the nod to start the season, but I don't think that the competition is over by game one.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I
Mhm.
think for me, if I had to put if I had to bet my own money on who would start game one, I would still tend to bet on King.
Mhm.
And I know most recently was the A&M spring game, and King didn't have his best performance. Maybe some of that was the weather or whatever else. Um, and I understand that, but um, I think at the end of the day, I think his knowledge of the offense and his athleticism will, you know, lead him to winning out. Now, I think 40-40-20, I think that's probably pretty dang accurate of what it is. If you were
Yeah,
if you
sure.
were handicapping it, I think those are probably the most accurate percentages of likely outcomes. But I mean, and it could be any one. But if I had to bet, I would still go with King. But um, with that, do you want to, go into each one of these guys and break them down?
I think so, and
Okay.
my thinking, and we can do a little bit of both. I mean, you let me know what all you want to say is. I'm thinking of doing a pros and cons of each guy, but rather than pros and cons in terms of what they're good at and what they're bad at, I'm saying pros and cons in terms of what would be the indicators that would make you think that they might end up being the starter and what would prevent them from being the starter. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So,
I
and I
like
think
that.
we start with King because I've got probably more points on King than I have any of the other guys.
Right.
Um, but I'll kick it off because since that's kind of I'm pitching that to you right now. But um, so with King, right? He's Jimbo's guy. Jimbo went out and got him in that class. He's got 2 years in the system where
Yep.
he should know the offense by now better than any of the other quarterbacks, even Max Johnson, of course. Um, that I think is going to be his biggest strength there. Um, I also think his athleticism is a little bit higher than Max Johnson's, and so the run threat that he presents is better than Max Johnson, and I think when it comes to their accuracy, throwing downfield, they're probably pretty similar, pretty close.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of a net neutral there. I think the biggest con or question mark or reason why he might not start goes back to the injury. It's hard to say what a player coming off injury is going to look like. I mean, we have recent memory examples, unfortunately, of several guys like that with Baylor Cupp, with Caleb Chapman, with these guys that were really, really good. And they are really, really good, but they battled that injury bug and they just never came back to be the player that they once were.
Yeah.
But then you also have, a guy like Zach Calzada that was getting injured that it didn't impact his performance. So, of course, Haynes actually had a true injury and surgery and all of that.
Right.
Um, but it's hard to say how that injury will really impact him until we see him on the field.
Yeah. I think that's fair, especially with it being, a lower leg injury, and
Hmm.
his speed is so, is such a big part of his game. Um, if he has lost a step, maybe that would hinder him in winning the competition. If it didn't affect him at all, if he's still running what he used to run, you hope that it's the case.
Hmm.
Um, but then it's, is he gonna get hurt again?
Right.
He's not the biggest guy. He's pretty tall for a quarterback. He's a tall kind of lean and slender guy, um, and he's not like the most muscled up quarterback. But
Hmm.
um, I think it was kind of a freak thing. Like I wouldn't expect him to uh, crumble at the first time he gets sacked or something like that. But
Sure.
your first 2 points are spot on, though. I think his he's a coach's kid, right? And like you
Hmm.
said, he's Jimbo's guy. Like I think, of all the quarterbacks, well, aside from Connor, who we'll talk about in a minute, of all the other quarterbacks we've recruited, I think that Jimbo has really, really, been like, hey, this is my QB right here. Like this is the guy that's gonna get us there.
Yeah.
Um, so the way he understands the offense, getting us into the right play, making the right decision, those are the most important aspects, I think, of playing quarterback in general, especially in this offense that is so complex. Um, and his speed's just a different level. Like um, Connor and Max are both good athletes, but neither of them run a 4.4 like King does.
Hmm.
And very few quarterbacks in the country run a 4.4. So that's you got you got King and you got HA in your backfield with Anias and Evan Stewart out wide. Like that's a lot of speed you can put on the field,
Mhm.
and we that doesn't even account for who's the third receiver in that setup, who's the tight end. That could be a very dangerous offensive attack, and I think it's very enticing for Jimbo. Um, for me, what might hold him back is I think turnovers is a big one.
Mhm.
Um, and he had the 3 picks in the Kent State game. I think you maybe you may be able to pin 1.5 of those on him.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, there's one definitely was, one definitely wasn't. The other one's kind of a little bit of both.
Mhm.
Um, but if turnovers continue to be a problem for him through fall camp, um, I could see Jimbo being like, okay, we can't send this guy out there if he's going to throw 2 picks a game.
Sure.
Um, and that's one thing that might hold him back. And what else was I going to say? I had a third one. Oh yeah, his like his accuracy. I actually like the way he throws the football. Like he doesn't have a rocket arm by any means, but he doesn't have a bad arm.
Mhm.
It's an adequate college arm for a quarterback. Um, and he's really good at the short and intermediate stuff. Like I really like his ball placement. But sometimes when he gets thrown downfield, he'll let it sail a little bit. Um,
Mhm.
so if he can clean that up, he may be a real weapon. But
Mhm.
it goes back to we don't know till we see it. So it just makes
Sure.
this competition all the more interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I think his ceiling is higher than Max Johnson's, um, but I think his floor is also lower if you consider re-injury or something turnovers, things like that.
Right.
There's a wider standard deviation there between what could we expect from him. Um, but going back to the original question, one of the ways I can really see this playing out, like if I were to try and bet on what I think could is probably going to end up happening, I mentioned that I think Max Johnson would probably get the nod game one, but I really feel like you're going to see them split reps pretty evenly those first 3 games. Just because I'm sure we'll go get up on those teams, and rather than waiting until fourth quarter to put in the second quarterback, I think you might see a switch at halftime. And so then I think that's where they're going to be looking for live reps between those two to really make that decision. And I could see there being a switch where King ends up as your starter for the first SEC game, and um, then I think you would see him, as long as there's not any injury. Um, hopefully, I think you could see King finish out the year as the starter. Then it gets to the secondary quarterback. Okay, well, I could see if there is that switch that I'm expecting, then Max is going to be your backup quarterback for the first several games. But by the end of the season, I think you see Wigman as your true second quarterback. I think you'll see him play the last 4 games of the season and then redshirt, if he's not the starter.
Yeah. Yeah, especially those first two. If like in the past, A&M's had one kind of warm up game and then a Power Five opponent in game two.
Mhm.
This year, you've got two. You have 3 home games in a row, but the first two are Sam Houston and App State.
Mhm.
Teams that you should be able to out talent and overpower pretty easily. And not that they're both going to be layups. They're going to be games that you can't go out there and mess around. Um,
Yeah.
but it does give you a chance if you get up big. Like you can experiment a little bit in the second half and be like, okay, let's see how this quarterback does. Uh, with this kind of situation or with this kind of with these guys in the game.
Mhm.
It gives you a lot more. It's live action instead of just practice reps. But um, it's interesting. Like we don't know what Jimbo's going to do. Is he going to do that? Is he going to just pick his guy and stick with him.
Mhm.
It's to be determined. But I guess let's talk about Max a little bit.
Okay. Um, I'll start by saying why I think Max is going to be your day one starter is just that he's got more experience. In the SEC, he's got more experience, and I think he's the safer pick. Like I said, his ceiling is lower than King, in my opinion, but his floor is higher than King's floor. So he's less risky. And if there's anything that Jimbo has shown, especially through Mon's era, he's going to go with the safe pick, you know. And but I think there's a little bit more pressure on him now to take some risks, because there's been a lot of thought of we haven't done what we need to do at the quarterback position. We haven't done what we need to do with the receivers. So we're going to have to take risks to get to that next level.
Yeah,
So I think to start, really, I think Miami is going to be the determining factor. I could see them splitting reps evenly there to really determine who's going to finish out the year as the starter. So Max, of course, the experience level for him is going to be higher. He's the safer pick in my opinion, in terms of what to expect from him. Um, what would prevent him from doing that? Well, I mean, he's been in Jimbo's system for 6 months. So there's even though he does have the experience, the game rep experience, he's not going to know the playbook as well as King would know it.
yeah,
So that's definitely going to be his biggest downfall there. Um, and I'm not sure how much his talent fits in with where they're trying to go with the offense from what they've talked about. They've talked about we need more downhill threats, we need more bigger plays and things like that. So you need somebody who's going to take more risks. Again, going back to risk, and I don't see him as being the one that they're going to say, "Hey, take this ball and take some risks with it." I see it
yeah,
more as, "Hey, be a game manager, get us where we need to be, and once we get up by a few scores, we'll then start taking risks and see what you can do."
yeah,
And but whereas King, if what I think is correct, where Max would start, King goes in and it's like, "Hey, we're already up. Go ahead and just take risks." So he has the he kind of gets the he would get the benefit in that situation of he doesn't have to be the game manager for a little while. He just goes in and just airs the ball out, makes big
right,
runs, that kind of thing.
yeah. That makes sense. Um, I think that's a very good point on, you know, we've like this offense has lacked that, you know, gunslinger down the field, threat at receiver and quarterback, like a quarterback willing to take those shots. Um,
Hmm.
and if Johnson, isn't that kind of player that may, keep him from winning the job. If Jimbo's like, hey, like we need to have a vertical passing game, I need you to, you know, take some shots down the field. And if you can't do that, then, it may end up being either King or Wigman.
Hmm.
Um, I'll tell you what I like about Max is he's a big dude. Like this is the
Yeah.
biggest quarterback we've had in probably since Tannehill. Like he's a legit like he's probably over 6'4", 225, 230 pounds. Like he's a sturdy dude. Um, he's got a good arm. Uh, he's a pretty good athlete. Like
Hmm.
he got sacked a lot at LSU. That's because his O line was very poor. But as he showed us in the spring game, like if he needs to tuck it and run, he can pick up a first down. That's really all you need. Like
Right.
you don't need him to take it 70 yards to the house. If he can just keep moving the chains, and uh, not just throw it away. That's a big plus. So
Hmm.
he's definitely capable of that. Um, I think knowledge in the offense could hold him back. That like he's only been
Hmm.
here 6 months. King's been here 2 years, or 2.5 years, I guess, if he came in that spring.
Yeah.
Um, so if he can catch up and you know be able to get this offense into the right play, execute the play the way it's supposed to be, supposed to be executed. He's got every chance to be the starter. Um, I did have some stats on Max last year. If you look at the SEC of the 14 quarterbacks, who played the most, um, when it comes to drops, the Vanderbilt quarterback was dead last in drops. His receivers dropped the ball a lot. 13th was Calzada. Our receivers did not catch the ball for him all the time. And 12th was Max. He played a lot of the year without his number one. Keishawn Butte led LSU in receiving last year and only played 6 games. Um, the other guys played all 12 games and couldn't match what he did in 6. So
Wow.
not having him out there, was a hindrance. And also obviously that coaching staff got fired and
Hmm.
they didn't have the year they wanted to. The run game was pretty poor. The O line was poor. Um, Max was under a lot of duress. So um, I think you look at his numbers last year and they're pretty good. They're not like like it's not going to wow you, but
Hmm.
he may not have been operating in the best circumstances. So um, I would agree. Like his ceiling isn't as high as King's. His his floor probably is higher. Like he is a safer bet, but he still could. He could still put up a lot of numbers and be a really good quarterback. But um,
Well, and I wanna piggyback on your comment about Keishawn Butte because I think that's going to be the hindrance for him. You know, two other hindrances, I guess. Um, First, those first couple games, we're going to be more vanilla. We're always going to be more vanilla at the beginning, and so that's where King having the better understanding of the offense doesn't really benefit him as much in those first 2 games because they're not going to really run the full on offense, versus once you get into the depth of the season, well, then you really do that knowledge really comes into play.
yeah,
But on the Keyshawn Butte um, comment, if we had great receiver play, great O line play, and great running back play last year, where we just were returning just very, very outstanding players. Um, I think you would definitely see him get the nod because we're saying, hey, we have the tools. We just need to get the ball to the guys, right?
yeah.
Instead, we lost Demas, we lost Chapman, we lost, Spiller, um, the
Weidemeyer,
Weidermeyer. We lost a lot of our big key guys. There's still a little bit of questions about Anias. I'm hoping that he'll be on there, but we have we have the talent at those positions. We just have to see them develop because of the youth that we have there and then inexperience. We're hoping that um, Evan Stewart produces, that Keith Brown produces, A Chain we know is going to produce, Anias we're not going to know he produces. We really are going to expect that the tight ends produce really well, but we don't have anything on film to show that they will. And then you got Devin Price, you got Moose Muhammad, you got these guys that have the talent there, but they haven't really and truly. I mean, they're not in line to receive a postseason award.
yeah,
They're not. Um, it's not theirs to lose, in other words, because they don't have that experience, and um, so that would then lead me to say, well, from your quarterback, you want somebody that if that fizzles, if your receivers, the youth at the receivers starts fizzling and they start dropping balls, and they're just all having a down day and it's just not working out the way it's supposed to be working out. You'll want to have somebody that can make the big play on the ground, and that's where I think King really, so that's why I think that would be a negative for Max Johnson,
yeah,
because it's not we're not dependent on the guys that he's throwing the ball to. And to your point about he is big, he can get that first down. If we were really confident in the guys he's throwing the ball to make the big plays, then we would need a quarterback that can just get us a first down if we needed it.
Yeah.
But instead, we're in the position where there's some mystery there of, are the guys at receiver going to make big plays? And if the answer is no, then we need the quarterbacks and running backs to step up and do that themselves.
Yeah.
And that's where I think King has the advantage.
Yeah.
And
There's
Wigman, for that matter.
Yeah, that's true. Um, there's one quick thing I wanted to bring up that I just thought of before we get into Connor. Um, I was reading, I think this was probably on Texas and like offenses like Ohio State and Alabama get a lot of love, and rightfully so. Like they're tremendous offenses, like great receivers, really good quarterbacks. They put up a lot of points, and obviously A&M has been a lot more focused on the run. But when you look at the splits, like we don't run the ball that much more often than Ohio State or Bama. It's like they're like 55-45 and we're like 50-50, like there's not a huge difference, but the difference is they run a lot more plays within a game, and we have typically operated a little bit slower. What I think we saw, and I don't want to say this is fact, but when I looked at a handful of our games last year, and the game that we ran the most plays in was the one that King started against Kent State. And obviously we had a lot of success in that game, but I think part of I think a benefit of knowing the offense is being able to get up to the line, know the play, and get the play in and get the ball off without the clock getting down to like 4 and 5 seconds, and that allows you to run more plays and be more explosive on offense. Not really up tempo, not hurry up no huddle, but just a little more tempo than we're used to seeing. I think with Zach, things moved a lot slower. We were a lot more dependent on the run because we kind of had to be, and we wanted to make sure that we had the right play and things like that. So I think our our question right now is like what are the deciding factors going to be? I think knowledge of the offense and accuracy, or I guess knowledge of the offense, decision making, and accuracy. I would put those as kind of the big ones, and like I feel like all these guys have some of those, but not all of them. And
Yeah.
and some like they may have all three, but we haven't seen it yet. We don't really know, but
Right. Well, and that's where King also, the knowledge of the offense part of it comes into play. Going back to what I was just saying about the wide receiver position, is there's a lot of players out there that don't have the knowledge of the offense. They haven't been in long enough to really and truly know it inside and out. So you need a leader out there that mistakes are made and somebody does something wrong, he can go directly to him and say, hey, here's what you did wrong, here's what we need, here's how to fix that, like go on to the next play, let's keep going. Especially if we're, I'm not necessarily talking about an interception or something like that. I'm talking about like guy runs the wrong route and it would have been a big pickup if he would have run the right route. Well, they're not going back over to the sideline, they're coming in, they're still on the field. Haynes can make a comment, and get it fixed probably better than Max Johnson can.
Right. Especially, I just thought of this. If you have, a freshman receiver and Evan Stewart and a freshman tight end, if like any of those three guys, making sure they're in the right spot, making sure they're lined up and know their assignments.
Right.
I think it's definitely very
because
important.
they're gonna line up wrong. They're gonna make mistakes. They're gonna run the wrong route. That's what you get whenever you're dealing with a freshman. But whenever Haynes goes to snap the ball and he looks over and Johnson's out of alignment, well, he can go over and hey, he can make an adjustment there. And not saying that Max Johnson can't do it, because I'm sure he's intelligent enough to be able to do that for sure. But that's just where the knowledge of the offense really gives you an advantage.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk Connor.
Well, Connor, I think I'm going to start with the negatives for Connor on why he's not going to start because I mean they're more obvious, um, because really and truly, I think we all have that selfish maybe or kind of excitement type ideal of we all deep down kind of want him to start because it's going to be more exciting and it's going to be more, um, you know, a cooler storyline if he goes out there and he's a Trevor Lawrence, or whatever. Um, and I think he could very well do that. I think he has the talent to do that. But of course, the negatives are he's a true freshman. He's going to make adjustments just like every other true freshman out there. He's 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 got a lot to learn and a lot of growth to do, and he would he would he could very well um, make big mistakes that the other quarterbacks wouldn't just because of his youth. Um, he also for I mean, really, with him, I guess the negative is the youth. Like
Right.
I really can't think of another negative for him, other than the inexperience. He's not going to know the offense as well as the others. Um, but even I mean, if you think about it, though, he and Max Johnson are on equal footing in terms of knowing the offense,
Right.
technically. But Max Johnson has the experience at the Power Five level that there's going to be some things there that translate better to help him. He's got a he's got an advantage to learning the offense faster than somebody coming out of high school.
Yeah.
Um, so the youth is really his downfall.
Right.
Um, but let's talk his pros, right? He's he's a sensational player. He's he he's the he's the Johnny Manziel or Kyler Murray or Baker Mayfield type sensation. Not saying that he's at the level of them. I mean, deep down, truly, I think that's where he'll end up by the end of his career. Um, I could see him being at that level this year too, but um, the sensation, the excitement that he brings to the game is there consistent with those guys. When
Yeah.
you watch those guys, and we talked about that. Did we talk about that on the episode, or was that just a conversation that you and I had the other day about? You look at like Bryce Young, who won the Heisman Trophy. Like 10 years from now, I'm not going to be looking back thinking like, "Oh man, Bryce Young, whenever he won the Heisman, man, that he had a sensational year."
Yeah.
Uh,
I think that was our phone call the other night.
yeah, so like you look back over um, the last few Heisman winners, and they weren't like the maybe 5 or 10 before that, right? They weren't RG3, Johnny Manziel, um, Jameis
Lamar Jackson.
Winston, Lamar Jackson, um, and even past those guys, some of the sensational players that were out there, like Patrick Mahomes and Kyler Murray. Um, I just went blank on the Oregon quarterback's name, Marcus Mariota.
Yeah.
The who Mormon Manziel. What's his name?
Zach Wilson.
Zach Wilson. That sensation, that
Yeah.
fun, that joy, excitement of watching him because you don't know what's coming.
Yeah.
Um, that's what Connor really has. That's why everybody has that feeling of like, oh man, that would be so cool if he started because it's exciting to watch. It's
Yeah.
way more exciting to watch. Um, but that in and of itself is a huge strength to have because you can't teach that.
Yeah.
That's something that it's just an innate talent that somebody has that makes them a competitor. It makes it
Yeah.
like, man, if we're losing and everything's falling apart around me and my guys aren't doing what they need to do, I'm going to take it upon myself and I'm just going to go. You
Yeah.
know, and I think that's what he brings to the table.
Yeah. No. I'll be frank. I think he's the best quarterback prospect that we've ever signed.
Hmm.
Um, I think in that conversation is probably it's probably Connor, Kyler, and Reggie McNeil. Those are probably your top three
Yeah.
prospects that we've ever signed. Obviously, Kyler has had tremendous success, even though he didn't have it here. He just signed an incredible deal with the Cardinals to stay in Arizona, and he's a great NFL quarterback. You know,
Hmm.
but as a prospect of what they, at the same time, I think that Connor is, you know, he's got everything you want. Um,
Hmm.
he's got adequate size, or he's got adequate size. You know, he's 6'1", 6'2", 215 pounds, um, gunslinger. Like every time you watch him, like I've tried to, you know, rein my expectations in. Like, okay, like he's human. He's not going to go out there and be perfect. But then we turn on his first high school game that was on ESPN last year against Klein Kane, I think, or Klein Oak, one of the two.
Hmm.
Um, and he scored 8 touchdowns. Like he looked like Superman out there. And
Yeah.
that's not a crappy team. Like he's playing 6A ball on a, you know, basically brand new high school team. Like Bridgeland has
Yeah.
never, like I think he's probably their first starting quarterback ever. Like they're brand new. Like they're not
Hmm.
a Westlake or Southlake or Guy or something like that. He's not playing with a bunch of other D1 prospects. Um, and he just went out there and kicked ass. Like
Hmm.
he's got the arm strength. He's got the compact, ideal release for a quarterback. He's played baseball his whole life. He's got that, Pat Mahomes, Kyler Murray kind of arm talent.
Yeah.
He's accurate. He is an incredible athlete. He may not have 4.4 speed, but he's got adequate speed. He's got great speed.
Yeah.
He can hit a home run for you. Um, and what stands out to me, well, there's two things. Like his suddenness as an athlete, like even if he's not the fastest guy in the world, like the way he can move around in the pocket and scramble around in the backfield, like he's it's almost Johnny esque. Like his
Hmm.
ability to you know see things coming and dodge things, and it doesn't phase him, and he still you know fires the ball out on time and on target. It's pretty remarkable, like what he can do. Um,
Yeah. I mean, he's like uh, um, to try and get away from the Johnny comparison, because I always feel like I compare quarterbacks to him, and in a way, it's not fair because it's a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. But
right.
he's like the NCAA football 2014 quarterback that you're playing with the controller, that as you're falling down, you throw a perfect pass to the receiver and they catch it, or
Yeah.
you're almost to the ground and you pitch it at the perfect time when you're doing an option. I mean,
Or
that's
you're getting
he's
blitzed and
got
you hit the
that.
spin move.
Yeah, he's got that moxie and that sensationalism of player one,
Yeah.
and not a NPC that's coming downhill, as a lineman. And so
Yeah.
it's that's what he's got, that again, that moxie and that sensationalism is what I think his true advantage is. And you mentioned that our top three prospects that you would say would be um, Wigman and Kyler Murray and Reggie McNeil, and I tend to agree with you there. Um, but maybe in top five, definitely top 10, but probably top five um, would be Haynes King,
Yeah.
and he's in that um, in terms of coming out of high school, he's that level, that caliber of prospect as well. Do I think Wigman is a better prospect coming out of high school than King? Yes, I do. Um, but King is still, it's marginal, the difference, to where King's close enough that his experience might win out this year.
Yeah.
But you put it as, let's say hypothetically that King had a career ending injury last year, and that now we're dealing with a quarterback battle between just Max Johnson and Connor Wigman. Well, I would then probably say it's more 50-50 split, where I would actually probably give Wigman the nod there. And again, that's nothing against Max Johnson, because I think that he's going to be your day one starter. But if it wasn't for the King factor being involved, I think he would be way up higher on the ladder in terms of who's going to start next year.
Right.
But I could see King coming in, starting for a year, maybe two, and really, putting us on, and him move on to the league, and then Connor step in and be that next guy that does it. Um, but yeah, I look at it as I'll just pitch a question to you. I'm sure you remember the Chick-fil-A Bowl in 2012 going into 2013, where we were down by Duke, 45 points,
It was
something like that. It
it was
was
it was
it
it was
was
sizable. I don't know if it was
it was
45. It was pretty
pretty
sizable though.
substantial, pretty substantial. One of the biggest comebacks in college football history. And if you're in that position, which quarterback gives you the most likelihood to do what Johnny did and bring us back to win? And I would have to say Wigman in that situation.
Yeah. I would I would say either King or Wigman, but you know, of all the qualities we've said about Wigman, his best quality is his competitiveness, like his
Mhm.
competitive, fire and his competitive nature, of just like, hey, like I'm not going to be denied if I'm on the field, like we're going to win the game, like
Mhm.
he's going to do whatever possible, and like Johnny did in that game, like he did some magical things. He jumped over falling down lineman and spun around, and then
Yeah.
you know and then threw an on-target pass to a wide open Labhart.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, uh, I think Connor has those same abilities.
And I think too, as fans and realistic fans, is at that we're going to try and be realistic about it. That's why we're not just hauling off and saying, "Oh yeah, Wigman is going to be your starter because he's great."
Yeah,
We're going to be realistic about it. I think we tend to get into that the assumption that you got to have one guy and he's got to start the whole year, and that's the only way that you're going to win a national championship, and and you have to pick him game one. But look back into the history of the teams that won the national championship, and you don't always see that. There's the precedence has been set before to show that it doesn't have to be. I think the best example of that is Alabama putting into Tagovailoa
I was about to
right there
say
to
that.
to win that. But you remember Ohio State whenever they played three quarterbacks that year.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think. Cardell Jones was one,
the
right? And then
the to start the year, it was supposed to be Braxton Miller, and he got
Braxton
injured.
Miller.
He got
Mhm.
injured before the season started, and they had to go to JT Barrett, and he played basically the whole season until the very last game, or last maybe like one or two games. And then he goes
Mhm.
down, and they put in Cardell Jones, and they win the whole thing. With
Yeah,
a
right.
with a third string quarterback.
I thought all three of them played, but it's been long enough that I don't. It sounds like you have a better memory of it than I do. But there's another example, and so, but going to Alabama and Tua, like they had a great quarterback as it was, and they took him out at the very end, the last quarter of the season, or the last half of the season, and put Tua in, and he won it for him. So
Yeah,
who's to say that can't happen with King and Wigman, where
yeah,
King is a great quarterback all year long and does everything that we need to do. But when we get right there to the end, and in my example, like you get in a position where you're in a A&M versus Duke situation, you're down and you need that competitor to step in and win the game for you. Who do you put in? Well, we could put in Wigman and have one of those same stories. So again, as a rational fan, we tend to not think about those because those are exceptions, not the rule.
right.
But I think the overall talent that we have at quarterback, it's not out of the realm of possibility for us to look for an exception and not the rule.
Yeah. Well, and Jalen Hurts, like he had started like 20 something games in a row for them, and
Right.
they're in the national championship, and they're down at half, and they bench him for a true freshman, and
Yeah.
he goes out and wins the thing for him. Like it was pretty remarkable.
And that takes some really big cojones from the coach, to
Yeah,
make when you got to risk it all.
yeah,
But it was needed for them at that point. They needed to do it, and I think that's truly where Wigman is pivotal to this season. Is if we need him, we got him. And if we get in that situation, hopefully King has a great year. And let's say we were in a national championship position, we're down by 21 points, going into the second half, and we suddenly need Wigman, we can make that change and we can win the game. But let's also assume that let's also put the scenario out there where King goes down game 7. Well, by that point, Wigman has enough experience, hopefully, that he can step in, and again, we need him, and we can finish it out. So, I think rationally speaking, he's our ace in the hole if we end up needing him. But if
yeah,
not, then I don't think that we see him push to start this year.
yeah.
Next year, whole different animal. But
Yeah,
this
I'll tell
year,
you
I
right
just don't
now,
see it.
I've got no idea what to expect if say King wins the job, starts the whole year, Max transfers, King doesn't declare for the NFL, and then you have King and Wigman. Like, how long can you hold Wigman off with his
I have
as much
I
talent as he
have no
has?
idea. I do think that I'm glad that we have Jimbo to figure that
Yeah,
out, because
no kidding.
I have faith that he'll figure it out the right way. But
Yeah,
how to do it, it's just like when we were talking about how to fix NIL and how to fix the transfer portal and how to fix all of that. I don't know how. I
yeah,
that to me, I would not know how to manage those two guys like that.
yeah,
But I have faith that Jimbo will do it correctly.
for sure. I'll tell you how I know about that Ohio State quarterback situation is because me and Kyle were in a college fantasy football league that year.
Hmm.
We did college fantasy for the first time, and our first pick was Braxton Miller because he was like, I think we had like the fourth or fifth pick, and he was supposed to be like a Heisman contender. We're like, oh yeah, let's take Braxton. And in the later rounds, we took Cardell Jones and JT Barrett just in case he got hurt, which he did, and then we had those guys as backups to put in. So
Wow.
I was following that situation pretty closely because my season depended on it in college fantasy. But
Yeah.
um, last question I'll pose to you because I heard this on the SEC network the other day. I think it's a good way to pose the question is: do you think A&M gets uh, A minus quarterback play this year? Not A plus, not Heisman level, but do you think we get good to great quarterback play?
Um, I would say yes, because I expect the first 5 games of the season for us to have B quarterback play, and I expect the last 7 games of the season, hopefully last 9 games of the season, for us to have A quarterback play. And so that would, of course, average out to an A minus. So I think over the whole season, yes.
Yeah,
But I think it's just like any other Jimbo team. I think we're going to see them get better as the year progresses,
yeah,
and I expect. I think every no matter which quarterback starts, I think they're fully capable, and it's well within the realm of expectation, I guess, not just possibility, but expectation that they have at least B level play. Because if they don't have B level play, the other two that are sitting the bench would. And
right.
why are they out there if they got C level play?
Yeah, yeah. I think I tend to agree. We're going to get pretty good, if not great, quarterback play this year. Um, I also think without a doubt, it's in a much better spot than it was last year. Um,
Definitely.
even if he played last year and King was healthy the whole year, like it's
Hmm.
still it's still better this year because of the depth and just the quality. Like
Yeah.
one of these three guys is gonna be a hit, and I don't know if, like you said, I don't know if it's game one, I don't know if it's game three or game seven, like, or game six in Tuscaloosa. Like, like we don't know when it's going to happen, but I think whoever wins this job will end up being a good to great quarterback. And if they're not, they may get pulled for one of the other guys that can get it done. So,
Well, and
all in all,
I think that's helpful because I think all the teams, no matter, and once we name our starter, and we're probably going to ride with them all season long, I think every team still has to game plan for all three guys instead of both guys. Last
yep,
year they just had to game plan for King or Calzada, but they're like, okay, we'll focus 99% on King and then 1% on Calzada. And then once
yeah,
Calzada was in, well, then it's easy for them to game plan.
right,
But when you got to plan for Max Johnson, who's a plenty good quarterback, Haynes King, who's a plenty good quarterback, but they have different styles. You got to plan for these two different styles, but then you got to plan for this sensationalism that might come on the field all of a sudden.
yeah,
That makes it a lot harder as a defensive coordinator.
yeah. I think all in all, I am very excited about the potential of this quarterback room, and like we said, there's 5 more weeks till the season, until, well, there's 6 more weeks till A&M season, but I can't wait for it to get here.
Yeah, me neither.
That's going to wrap us up. Next time you hear from us, we'll be talking. I don't think we've decided yet, so it'll be a surprise.
Yeah, we haven't decided, but I'm sure we'll just go the natural progression and do like wide receivers, maybe tight ends too,
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah, something like that.
But we might switch it up and just go, defensive backs
Yeah,
or something.
long snappers. Let's talk Connor Choate. All right. Well, we appreciate y'all listening. If you haven't already, follow us on our channels. Subscribe to our YouTube so you can see us. And hey, if you subscribe, it should turn on your notification, so you'll get that notification when we go live, and you can hop in here and ask us some questions and things like that. So
Yeah, smash that subscribe button, click that little bell. That way you get your alerts.
ring the
And
bell.
maybe once we get into the depth of the season, we'll be able to have more regular time frames where hey, this show's going to come on Thursdays at 6 o'clock or whatever. But as of right now, there's just too much going on, too much chaos. So we'll see what we can do. But we'd like for more people to join live, to where we can get more and more feedback as we're going through. So
Absolutely.
thank you for listening, and beat the hell out of Sam Houston.
See y'all next time. Bye.
Bye.